The cold wind cut through downtown Seattle as I stood outside the glass building where I worked, watching my reflection in the polished surface. November always brought this heavy feeling to my chest, like carrying stones in my pockets. It was not just the gray skies or the early darkness that crept in by 5 in the afternoon. It was knowing that Thanksgiving was coming, and with it, the inevitable gathering at my parents' house in Spokane. I pulled my coat tighter and headed back inside. The warmth of the office hit me immediately, along with the familiar buzz of keyboards and hushed phone conversations. I had been working at Morrison & Associates, a mid-sized architectural firm, for 3 years now. Started as a junior draftsman, barely making enough to cover rent in my tiny apartment in Capitol Hill. But I had worked my way up, slowly, painfully, through late nights and weekend shifts that nobody else wanted to take. My desk was buried under blueprints and coffee cups. I swept aside some papers and sat down, pulling up the latest project on my computer screen. The Riverside Community Center. It was my baby, really. I had pitched the idea 6 months ago during a staff meeting, suggesting we take on a pro bono project for the underserved neighborhood near the industrial district. Most of my colleagues had rolled their eyes. Architecture firms do not make money on charity cases, they said. But our boss, Patricia Montgomery, had leaned forward in her chair, fingers steepled under her chin, and asked me to explain more. I had spent weeks on that proposal. Research, sketches, budget projections, partnership proposals with local nonprofits. The Riverside neighborhood had nothing. No safe spaces for kids after school, no place for elderly residents to gather, no community resources within walking distance. Just old warehouses, cracked sidewalks, and people who had been forgotten by the city's rapid growth and tech boom. Patricia had approved it. Against the advice of the senior partners, against the logic of billable hours and profit margins, she had given me the green light. And now here we were, 3 months from breaking ground, with funding secured from grants and private donors, with a design that balanced beauty and practicality, that would actually serve the people who needed it most. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Are you coming home for Thanksgiving? Your father wants to know how many place settings to expect. I stared at the message for a long moment. My father wants to know. Not we want to know. Not we hope you will come. Just a logistical question, like confirming a dinner reservation. I typed back. Yes, I will be there. The response came quickly. Good. We will see you Thursday at 3. Do not be late. I set the phone down and rubbed my eyes. The relationship with my father had always been complicated. Richard Bennett was a practical man, a former Boeing engineer who had spent 35 years designing airplane parts in the same factory, believing in hard work, tangible results, and traditional measures of success. When I had told him at 18 that I wanted to study architecture instead of engineering, he had looked at me like I had announced I was joining the circus. Architecture is for dreamers, he had said, sitting in his recliner with a beer in hand. You want to make a living, you need something solid. Something real. But I had gone anyway, taking out student loans that still hung over me like storm clouds, attending the University of Washington while working night shifts at a grocery store to cover expenses. I had graduated with decent grades, nothing spectacular, and then faced the harsh reality that most architecture graduates face. The field was crowded. The jobs were scarce. The pay was laughable for entry-level positions. For 2 years after graduation, I had bounced between internships and temporary positions, living in a shared apartment with 4 other people, eating ramen and day-old bread, wondering if my father had been right all along. Every phone call home had been an exercise in humiliation. What are you doing now? Still drawing pictures? When are you going to get a real job? When I finally landed the position at Morrison & Associates, I had called home with genuine excitement. It was not a glamorous role, but it was stable, it was in my field, and it was a foot in the door at a respected firm. My father's response had been underwhelming. Well, that is a start, I suppose. Let me know when you make partner. 3 years later, I was still a mid-level associate. Still living modestly. Still trying to prove something to a man who seemed determined not to see it. My coworker, Ben, rolled his chair over to my desk, breaking my spiral of thoughts. He was a cheerful guy in his early 40s, with graying hair and a perpetual smile. Are you good? You've been staring at that screen for 10 minutes without moving. I blinked and looked at him. Yeah, sorry. Just thinking about Thanksgiving. Family stuff. Ben nodded knowingly. I get it. My in-laws are hosting this year. 5 hours of my father-in-law explaining how he would have designed every building in Seattle better if only someone had asked him. He is a retired accountant, by the way. Never drawn a building in his life. I managed to smile. Sounds rough. You heading home? Ben asked. Spokane. My parents' place. Ben winced sympathetically. Long drive for awkward conversations? Something like that. Well, hey, before you go, Patricia wants to see you. She said something about the Riverside project. Sounded important. My stomach tightened. Important could mean anything. Budget problems, permit issues, donor backing out. I had learned in this profession that good news came in emails, but problems required face-to-face meetings. I headed toward Patricia's office at the end of the hall. She was in her mid-50s, with sharp features and silver hair cut short, always dressed in dark blazers and practical shoes. She had built Morrison & Associates from a two-person operation 20 years ago into a firm with 35 employees and projects across the Pacific Northwest. People respected her, some feared her, but everyone agreed she was fair. I knocked on her open door. You wanted to see me? She looked up from her desk, which was somehow immaculate despite the chaos that usually defined our profession. Come in, close the door. My heart rate picked up. I sat down in the chair across from her desk, trying to read her expression. Patricia was not someone who gave much away. The Riverside Community Center, she began, folding her hands on the desk. I just got off the phone with the mayor's office. Oh no. Here it comes. Some regulation we missed, some neighborhood complaint, some political reason why we cannot build in that area. They want to feature it, Patricia continued. The mayor is looking for positive stories to highlight the city's commitment to underserved communities. They want to do a press event when we break ground in February. Local news coverage, the works. I sat there trying to process what she had just said. That is good, right? It is very good. Patricia leaned back in her chair. More than that, the attention has brought in 3 more donors. Significant contributions. We are now over budget, which means we can expand the original design. Add the rooftop garden you wanted, upgrade the materials, include better accessibility features. I felt something unfamiliar rising in my chest. Hope maybe. Or pride. I had spent so long bracing for failure that success felt foreign. This project is going to put Morrison & Associates on the map for community-focused design, Patricia said. And it is going to put you on the map too. I am listing you as lead architect on all the press materials. This is your project, your vision. You deserve the recognition. I did not know what to say. Thank you seemed insufficient. I just nodded, afraid that if I tried to speak, my voice would crack. Patricia smiled, a rare genuine smile. You have worked incredibly hard on this. Not just on Riverside but on everything we have given you over the past 3 years. Late nights, weekend work, taking on the projects nobody else wanted. I noticed these things. The partners noticed these things. She pulled out a folder from her desk drawer and slid it across to me. Inside, I saw documents with the firm's letterhead. Effective January 1st, we are promoting you to senior associate. It comes with a salary increase, better benefits, and your own team for future projects. You have earned it. I stared at the papers, at my name printed there with the new title beneath it. Something inside me cracked open, years of doubt and exhaustion and feeling like I was running in place suddenly giving way to this moment of validation. Take the rest of the day off, Patricia said. Go home, celebrate, enjoy your Thanksgiving. When you come back Monday, we will start planning the press event and your transition to the new role. I left her office in a daze, gathered my things from my desk, and headed out into the cold Seattle afternoon. The city looked different somehow. The gray clouds did not seem as heavy. The wind did not cut as deep. As I drove home, I thought about calling my parents, telling them about the promotion, the project, the recognition. But something stopped me. Some old wound that had not quite healed, some part of me that still expected disappointment instead of congratulations. I would tell them at Thanksgiving, I decided. In person, where they could see that I had actually made something of myself, despite all the predictions to the contrary. The drive to Spokane on Thursday morning was long and monotonous, Interstate 90 stretching east through the Cascade Mountains, the landscape shifting from dense forests to high desert plains. I had made this drive dozens of times, knew every rest stop and scenic viewpoint, every stretch where cell service dropped out and the radio became static. I arrived at my parents' house just before 3, pulling up to the familiar split-level home with its neat lawn and attached garage. My father's truck was in the driveway, same Ford F-150 he had driven for 15 years, maintained with the kind of meticulous care he applied to everything mechanical. My mother hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. That was beautiful, she whispered. I'm so proud of you. Julie hugged me next, still holding her phone. That was incredible. You were so professional and passionate. I got the whole thing on video. Trevor shook my hand firmly. Really impressive work, man. That center is going to change a lot of lives. Then there was just my father, standing slightly apart, hands back in his coat pockets. We looked at each other for a long moment. The noise of the crowd faded into background static. This was the moment I had been building toward, the validation I had been seeking for so many years. He cleared his throat. That was a good speech. Thank you. Another pause. I could see him struggling with something, words forming and dissolving before they could reach his mouth. Finally he said, "The design looks solid. You clearly put a lot of thought into it." It was not the glowing praise I had hoped for, but it was something. More than I usually got. I nodded. Thanks. It has been a lot of work. I'm sure it has. He looked past me at the rendering of the community center displayed on a large board nearby. How long until it is finished? Construction starts next month. Should be completed by October, November at the latest. And they are paying you for this? The question stung even now, even after everything. No, it is pro bono. But it has brought the firm recognition, donors, future paid projects. And it got me the promotion. Right. The promotion. He said it flatly, like he was confirming a fact rather than celebrating an achievement. My mother stepped between us, sensing the tension. Richard, why don't we let him get back to his guests? There are a lot of people waiting to talk to him. But I was not done. I needed to address this directly, needed to stop dancing around the elephant that had been in every room we shared for the past decade. Dad, why did you even come today if you were just going to minimize this? He looked surprised. I'm not minimizing anything. You asked if they are paying me. You called the promotion right like it is barely worth mentioning. This is a big deal. The mayor is here. The news is here. My boss just publicly praised my work. And you are standing here acting like it is mildly interesting at best. People around us were starting to notice, conversations dropping to whispers. My mother looked mortified. Julie stepped closer, ready to intervene. But my father's expression hardened. You want me to tell you that you were right and I was wrong? That your choices were smart and mine were old-fashioned and outdated? Fine. You were right. You chose your path and you stuck with it, and here you are getting recognition for it. Congratulations. The words should have felt like victory, but they tasted bitter. Because they were not genuine, not really. They were compliance, not understanding. Acknowledgement, not pride. I do not need you to tell me I was right, I said quietly. I need you to see me. To understand why this matters. To recognize that success does not look the same for everyone, and just because my path does not match yours does not make it less valid. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Patricia appeared at my elbow. Sorry to interrupt, but Channel 5 wants to do a live interview segment. Can you come with me for a few minutes? I looked at my father one more time, then nodded. Sure. I will be right there. I walked away, feeling his eyes on my back, leaving the conversation unfinished once again. The interview was a blur. I answered questions about the project, about community-focused architecture, about what I hoped the center would achieve. The reporter was enthusiastic and genuine, and I found myself relaxing into the conversation, remembering why I had chosen this profession in the first place. Not for my father's approval, but because I believed in the power of space to shape lives, to create possibility, to build community. When I finished, I looked around for my family but could not find them. Ben appeared with a bottle of water and a knowing look. They left about 10 minutes ago. Your mom said they had a long drive back and wanted to beat traffic. She also said to call her later. Of course they left. I should not have been surprised, but disappointment still settled in my chest like a stone. The rest of the event passed in a haze. More congratulations, more handshakes, more conversations about timelines and budgets and design philosophy. By the time the tent came down and the crowd dispersed, I was exhausted, emotionally and physically drained. Patricia found me standing by my car as the sun began to set, painting the Seattle sky in shades of orange and pink. You okay? Honestly? I do not know. She leaned against the car next to me. Family stuff is complicated. Trust me, I know. My father was a factory foreman who thought architecture was pretentious nonsense for people with too much time and money. When I started this firm, he told me I was wasting my engineering degree. I looked at her in surprise. I did not know that. Eventually he came around. Took about 15 years, but he finally admitted he was proud of what I had built. She smiled sadly. He died 2 years later. Heart attack. I always wondered if those 15 years of disappointment were worth the 2 years of acceptance. I'm sorry. My point is, you cannot build your life around someone else's approval. Not even your father's. Maybe especially not your father's. You do the work that matters to you, you build the things you believe in, and you find your validation in the impact you make in the people who appreciate it. If your father comes around, great. If not, you still have a life and a career worth being proud of. She pushed off the car and squeezed my shoulder. Today was a huge success. The mayor was impressed. The community is excited, your colleagues respect you. Hold on to that. Let the rest work itself out. After she left, I sat in my car for a long time, watching the sky darken, replaying the day. The speech, the applause, my father's lukewarm response, the argument. It had not gone the way I had hoped. But Patricia was right. The work mattered. The project was real. The lives it would touch were real. Whether my father could see that or not did not change those facts. I drove home through the Seattle evening, the city lights reflecting off the still waters of Puget Sound, and tried to find peace in what I had accomplished rather than pain in what I had failed to earn. February bled into March, and the Riverside Community Center moved from concept to concrete reality. I watched the first foundation being poured on a cold, drizzly morning, standing at the site with my hard hat and coffee, feeling a strange mix of excitement and anxiety. This was no longer drawings on a screen or models on a table. This was real. Permanent. A structure that would stand for decades, that would either validate my vision or expose my failures for everyone to see. Melissa and Brian, my junior architects, were invaluable during this phase. Melissa had an eye for detail that caught problems before they became expensive mistakes. Brian had a natural rapport with the contractors, could translate between the language of design and the language of construction in ways that made everyone's job easier. I found myself genuinely enjoying the mentorship role, seeing them grow and develop, remembering how much I had needed that guidance when I was in their position. The tension with my father settled into a familiar pattern of avoidance. We did not talk after the press event. My mother called weekly with updates about life in Spokane, carefully skirting around any mention of the community center or my father's reaction to the event. Julie texted occasionally with wedding planning updates and cheerful attempts to pretend everything was normal. And my father remained silent, a presence defined by absence. I told myself it did not matter. I had Patricia's respect, my colleagues' admiration, and work that fulfilled me. But late at night, when the apartment was quiet and the city noise faded to a distant hum, I could not help but replay the argument, wonder what I could have said differently, imagine scenarios where he finally understood. In early March, something unexpected happened. I was at the construction site, reviewing framing with the general contractor, when my phone rang. Unknown number, Spokane area code. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Hello. Is this the architect for that community center? A woman's voice, older, hesitant. Yes, this is him. Can I help you? My name is Dorothy Richardson. I live in the Riverside neighborhood. I saw the news coverage about the center and I wanted to call and say thank you. I stepped away from the construction noise, pressing the phone closer to my ear. Thank you for calling, Ms. Richardson. I am glad you are excited about the project. Excited is an understatement, honey. Do you know how long this neighborhood has been waiting for something like this? 30 years I have lived here, watched the city grow up around us, watched them build fancy condos and tech offices everywhere else, while we got nothing. My grandchildren, they have nowhere safe to play after school. The library is too far, the parks are not maintained. This center, it is going to change everything for us. Her words hit me with unexpected force. I had known intellectually that the project mattered, but hearing it from someone who would actually use it, who needed it, made it real in a way that all the press coverage and professional recognition had not. I am honored to be part of it, I said, and meant it more than I had meant anything in a long time. My church group, we have been praying for something like this for years. And then you came along with your plan, and now it is actually happening. You are doing God's work, young man. After we hung up, I stood there in the March drizzle, letting her words sink in. You are doing God's work. My father had never said anything remotely close to that. He measured success in salary figures and equity and career progression. But this woman, who I had never met, who had nothing to gain from flattering me, saw the real value in what we were building. Over the following weeks, more calls came. Community members who had heard about the project, who wanted to express gratitude or offer suggestions or simply share their excitement. I started keeping a notebook of their comments, their stories, the ways they envisioned using the space. It became a touchstone, something to return to when the construction challenges mounted or the budget concerns arose or the doubt crept in. In mid-March, Patricia called me into her office. She had that look on her face, the one that meant either very good news or very bad news. I could never tell which until she started talking. I just got off the phone with the American Institute of Architects, she said without preamble. They want to feature Riverside in their Pacific Northwest showcase this fall. It is a significant honor, puts us in front of the entire regional architecture community. That is incredible. There is more. She leaned back in her chair, a rare smile crossing her face. A developer reached out. He saw the coverage of Riverside, Was impressed by the design and the community focus. He has a mixed-use project in Tacoma, wants us to bid on it. It is a $20 million project. I sat there trying to process the number. 20 million. That was more than our firm typically handled, the kind of project that could transform our entire operation. He specifically asked for you to lead the design team, Patricia continued. Said he wants the same philosophy you brought to Riverside, that focus on community and livability, but applied to a commercial context. I am still fairly new to the senior associate role. You are ready. Patricia's tone left no room for argument. You have proven you can handle complex projects, manage teams, balance vision and practicality. This is your moment. Unless you do not feel ready? No, I am ready. The words came out more confidently than I felt, but I meant them. I was ready. Ready to step into bigger challenges, ready to prove that Riverside was not a fluke but a foundation. Good. We pitch next month. Start thinking about your approach. I left her office walking on air, immediately wanting to call someone to share the news. I called my mother. She answered on the third ring, slightly out of breath. Hi, honey. Everything okay? Everything is great. I just found out we are pitching a huge project in Tacoma. $20 million, and the developer specifically asked for me to lead the design. Oh my goodness. Her excitement was genuine and unguarded. That is wonderful. You must be thrilled. I am. It is a big opportunity. Could really change things for my career. I'm so proud of you. Your father will be too when I tell him. The mention of my father dampened my excitement slightly. How is he? Oh, busy at the plant. He has been picking up extra shifts to help pay for Julie's wedding. She paused. He mentions your project sometimes. The community center. Asks if I have heard any updates. Really? I could not keep the surprise out of my voice. He is not good at expressing it, but I think the press event impacted him more than he let on. Give him time. After we hung up, I sat at my desk, turning over her words. He mentions your project sometimes. It was not much, barely a thread of connection, but it was more than silence. More than dismissal. Maybe, just maybe, something was shifting. The weeks leading up to the Tacoma pitch consumed me. I worked with Melissa and Brian to develop concepts, researching the neighborhood, understanding the demographics, crafting a vision that balanced the developer's commercial needs with genuine community benefit. We designed ground-floor retail spaces that would support local businesses, affordable housing units mixed with market rate, public plazas that would activate the street life. It was ambitious, maybe too ambitious, but it felt right. The pitch meeting was in mid-April at the developer's office in Tacoma. Patricia, Michael, Diane, and I made the drive south, reviewing our presentation in the car, making last-minute adjustments. The developer, Robert Hayes, was in his 60s, with the casual confidence of someone who had built and sold dozens of buildings. He listened to our pitch with an unreadable expression, occasionally jotting notes, asking pointed questions about feasibility and cost. When we finished, he sat back in his chair and steepled his fingers. I have heard a lot of pitches for this project. Firms much bigger than yours with impressive portfolios and slick presentations. But none of them talked about community the way you just did. None of them seemed to understand that a building is not just about maximizing square footage and return on investment. It is about creating something that becomes part of the fabric of a place. He looked directly at me. That is what I saw in the coverage of your Riverside project. A building designed for people, not just profit. That is what I want for Tacoma. So, congratulations. The job is yours if you want it. The drive back to Seattle was celebratory. Patricia was already on the phone with the office, sharing the news. Michael and Diane were discussing team assignments and timelines. And I sat in the back seat, watching the landscape blur past, feeling like I had finally truly arrived. Not just as an architect, but as someone whose vision was valued, whose approach was sought after, whose work mattered beyond a single project. That evening I called my mother again. She answered immediately. How did the pitch go? We got it. $20 million project, and I am the lead designer. She actually squealed, a sound I had not heard from her in years. Oh honey, this is amazing. Wait, let me tell your father. Richard, come here. I heard muffled conversation, then my father's voice in the background. What is it? It is our son. He got that big project in Tacoma. $20 million. There was a pause, then my father's voice, clearer now. He got it? Yes. My mother was nearly breathless with excitement. SN, not that wonderful? Another pause. Then, quietly, tell him congratulations. It was not a conversation with me directly. It was not a phone call or a heartfelt acknowledgement. But it was something. The first positive word my father had said about my career in longer than I could remember. My mother came back on the line. He says congratulations. He is proud, I can tell. He just does not know how to say it directly. I know, Mom. Thank you for telling me. After we hung up, I sat on my couch, looking out at the Seattle skyline, at the lights of the city where I had built a life and a career despite all the doubt. Tell him congratulations. 2 words, delivered secondhand, but they meant more than I wanted to admit. The spring passed in a blur of activity. Riverside continued rising from the ground, the structure taking shape, walls going up, roof trusses being installed. I visited the site weekly, watching the transformation, fielding questions from Dorothy Richardson and other community members who stopped by to see the progress. Their enthusiasm never wavered, their gratitude never felt like obligation. It was pure and genuine, a reminder of why I had chosen this path in the first place. The Tacoma project began in earnest. I assembled a team including Melissa and Brian, along with 2 engineers and a sustainability consultant. We held community meetings in Tacoma, listening to residents' concerns and hopes, incorporating their feedback into the design. It was a different challenge than Riverside, with more stakeholders and more complexity, but the core philosophy remained the same. Build something that serves people, not just profit. In May, my sister got married. It was a beautiful ceremony in Spokane, at a historic venue overlooking the river. I served as a groomsman, stood up there in a rented tux, watching Julie and Trevor exchange vows with tears streaming down both their faces. My mother cried through the entire ceremony. My father sat stoically in the front row, but I caught him wiping his eyes once when he thought no one was looking. At the reception, I found myself at a table with extended family, aunts and uncles and cousins I saw once every few years. They asked about my life, my career, and I told them about Riverside and Tacoma, about the press event and the recognition. They listened with polite interest, making appropriate impressed noises, but I could tell most of them did not really understand what I did or why it mattered. Then my Uncle Tom, my father's older brother, leaned over. Your dad has been talking about you, you know. I looked at him in surprise. Yes. Yeah. Told me about that community center, about the mayor being there, about the news coverage. He does not say it directly, but I can tell he is proud. You have to understand, your dad, he grew up in a different time. Success meant stability, security, a steady paycheck. The idea of taking risks for passion, it is foreign to him. But he is trying to understand. Give him credit for that. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. My uncle clapped me on the shoulder and moved on to other conversations, but his words stayed with me through the rest of the evening. Later, during the father-daughter dance, I watched my dad waltz with Julie, both of them smiling, and felt a pang of something I could not quite name. Jealousy maybe. Or longing. Julie had always been the easy child, the one whose choices made sense to our parents, whose life followed a recognizable pattern. Marriage, house, stability. The American dream in its most traditional form. I did not resent her for it. But I envied the ease of her relationship with our father, the way he could express pride in her accomplishments without qualification or criticism. As if sensing my thoughts, my father appeared beside me at the bar where I was getting a drink. Some wedding, he said. Yeah, Julie looks happy. She does. He ordered a whiskey, neat. Trevor seems like a solid guy. Good job, stable income, clear career path. I braced myself for the inevitable comparison, the subtle dig about my own choices. But it did not come. Instead, he took a sip of his drink and said, Your mother tells me your Tacoma project is going well. It is. We just finalized the design phase. Construction starts in August. That is good. He hesitated, then added, She also tells me you have been getting calls from people in the Riverside neighborhood. People thanking you for the community center. Yeah, quite a few actually. It has been really meaningful hearing how much it matters to them. He nodded slowly. That must be satisfying. Knowing your work is making a difference. It is. We stood there in silence for a moment, the wedding reception noise swirling around us. Then my father said, I do not understand what you do. The artistic side of it, the design philosophy, the community focus. It is not how I think about work. But I can see that you are good at it. And I can see that it matters to people. So I guess what I am trying to say is, I was wrong to dismiss it the way I did. I turned to look at him fully, this man who had been such a source of pain and motivation in my life, who I had been trying to impress for as long as I could remember. Was this the apology I had been waiting for? The acknowledgement I had craved? Thank you for saying that, I managed. I'm not good at this stuff. Your mother keeps telling me I need to be more supportive, more encouraging. She is probably right. He finished his whiskey in one swallow. But I want you to know, even if I do not say it often or say it right, I do care about your success. In my own way. It was not a perfect reconciliation. It was not a movie moment with tears and hugs and complete understanding. But it was real. It was honest. And it was more than I had ever expected from him. "I know, Dad. And I appreciate you trying." We stood there a moment longer, then someone called his name and he moved away to talk to other guests. But something had shifted, some small crack in the wall between us that let in a bit of light. The rest of the wedding was lighter somehow. I danced with Julie, with my mother, with cousins and family friends. I laughed at bad jokes and ate too much cake and felt for the first time in a long time, like maybe I belonged in this family after all. Not despite my choices but because of them. Because I had stayed true to what mattered to me, and that integrity had finally earned, if not complete acceptance, at least a grudging respect. Driving back to Seattle the next morning, hungover and exhausted, I thought about my father's words. "I do care about your success. In my own way." It was not the declaration I had imagined, not the passionate pride I had hoped for. But maybe that was okay. Maybe people show love in different languages, and I was finally learning to understand his. Summer arrived with uncharacteristic sunshine, and Seattle transformed into the city everyone pretends it is year-round. The Riverside Community Center's exterior was complete by late June, and we moved into the interior finishing phase. Flooring, paint, fixtures, all the details that would transform a structure into a space. I spent hours on site, making decisions about colors and materials, ensuring every choice aligned with the original vision of accessibility and warmth. Dorothy Richardson became a regular presence during construction. She would stop by most afternoons, bringing lemonade for the workers, asking questions about the progress, sharing stories about the neighborhood. She introduced me to other residents, people who would use the center, whose lives would be directly impacted by the work we were doing. There was Marcus, wait, no, I should not use that name. There was Jerome, a teenager who wanted to use the computer lab to apply for colleges. There was Linda, a single mother who needed affordable after-school care for her 3 kids. There was Mr. Patterson, an elderly veteran who hoped the center would host support groups. Each person made the project more real, more urgent, more meaningful than any professional recognition ever could. In early July, Patricia scheduled a walkthrough of the nearly completed center for the firm's partners and key staff. We gathered in the main hall, sunlight streaming through the large windows I had fought to include in the budget, illuminating the space with warm natural light. The walls were painted in soft, welcoming colors. The floors were durable but attractive. Everything spoke to the balance I had tried to achieve between beauty and practicality. "This is remarkable," Michael said, walking slowly through the space. "You can feel the thought that went into every detail." Diane nodded in agreement. "This is going to be the crown jewel of our portfolio. I can already see the award submissions." But Patricia was quiet, moving through the space with a contemplative expression. When the others had moved on to examine the kitchen facilities, she pulled me aside. "Do you know what makes this special?" she asked. "The design? The community input? No. Well, yes, those things. But what really makes it special is that you believed in it when nobody else did. You pushed for this when it made no business sense, when it would have been easier and more profitable to focus on commercial projects. You saw a need and you filled it, consequences be damned. That is what separates good architects from great ones. The willingness to risk something for a vision." Her words echoed in my mind for days afterward. The willingness to risk something for a vision. Was not that what I had been doing my entire career? Risking my father's approval, risking financial security, risking the safe and predictable path, all for the belief that architecture could matter, could serve, could change lives? The Tacoma project moved forward in parallel with Riverside's completion. The contrast between the two was instructive. Tacoma was bigger, more complex, with more stakeholders and more money at stake. But the philosophy remained consistent. Design for people first, profit second. Create spaces that serve the community, not just the developer's bottom line. Robert Hayes, the developer, appreciated this approach more than I expected. During one of our progress meetings in late July, he shared his own story. "I made my money building cookie-cutter apartment complexes and strip malls," he said. "Profitable, efficient, completely soulless. Then my daughter became a social worker in Tacoma, working with homeless families. She showed me the gap between what we build and what people actually need. It changed how I see development. I want my legacy to be more than maximizing square footage. I want to build something that matters." His words reminded me that I was not alone in this philosophy, that there were others who understood that buildings are not just products but contributions to the fabric of society. In August, as Riverside approached its final inspections and certificate of occupancy, my mother called with unexpected news. "Your father wants to come see the finished center." before it opens to the public. Is that possible? I was silent for a moment, processing. He wants to see it? Yes. He has been following the progress through me and through news articles online. He wants to see it in person. See what you built? Of course. I can arrange a private tour whenever he wants. We settled on the last Saturday in August. My parents would drive over Friday night, stay in a hotel, and I would give them a tour Saturday morning before heading back to Spokane that afternoon. The days leading up to their visit filled me with nervous energy. I wanted everything to be perfect, wanted the center to speak for itself in ways my words never could. I walked through it dozens of times, seeing it through fresh eyes, through my father's eyes, wondering what he would notice, what he would understand, what he would dismiss. Saturday morning arrived clear and warm. I met my parents in the Riverside parking lot at 9 o'clock. My mother was dressed nicely, as if attending a formal event. My father wore jeans and a button-down shirt, his version of casual respectability. "Thank you for making the trip," I said, unlocking the front door. "Of course, sweetie." My mother squeezed my arm. "We would not miss this." My father said nothing, just looked up at the building's exterior, taking in the clean lines, the large windows, the welcoming entrance. Inside I gave them the full tour. The main hall with its high ceilings and natural light. The computer lab with 20 new stations, donated by a tech company after the press coverage. The multipurpose rooms that could serve as classrooms or meeting spaces. The commercial kitchen where cooking classes and community meals would happen. The gym with its polished floor and adjustable basketball hoops. The rooftop garden, accessible by elevator, with raised beds and seating areas overlooking the neighborhood. My mother exclaimed over every detail, asked questions about the design choices, praised the thoughtfulness of the accessibility features. My father remained mostly silent, moving through the space slowly, stopping occasionally to examine a detail, running his hand along a wall, testing a door handle. When we reached the main hall again, completing the circuit, my mother hugged me tightly. "This is incredible. You should be so proud." "I am." She looked at my father expectantly. He was standing in the center of the hall, looking up at the skylights I had included to maximize natural light while maintaining energy efficiency. "That," I prompted. "What do you think?" He turned slowly, taking in the full space one more time. Then he walked over to where I stood with my mother. "I can see it," he said finally. "See what? What you were trying to do. All those years, all those arguments about practicality and profit. You were not just being stubborn or idealistic. You actually had a vision. And this," he gestured around the space, "this is that vision made real." He paused, and I could see him struggling with the words, with the vulnerability of admitting he had been wrong. I did not understand because I have never thought about buildings this way. To me, a building is just shelter, just function. 4 walls and a roof. But you see it as something more. As possibility. As community. As a tool for change. His eyes met mine, and for the first time in my memory, there was no criticism in them. No disappointment. Just acknowledgement. "This is good work. Important work. I was wrong to dismiss it. I was wrong to measure your success by my standards instead of understanding that you were building something I could not even conceptualize." My mother was crying quietly beside me. I felt my own throat tighten, years of longing for this exact moment suddenly realized. "Thank you," I managed. "That means more than you know." He nodded, uncomfortable with the emotion but not running from it. "Your mother has been telling me for years that I need to see what you are doing, really see it. I guess I was too stubborn to listen. But standing here, seeing this place, knowing the people it is going to help, I get it now. You are not just drawing pictures or playing with designs. You are building something that will outlast all of us, that will impact people for decades." He extended his hand and I shook it, formal but genuine. "I am proud of you. I should have said it years ago, but I am saying it now. I am proud of the architect you have become, the man you have become, despite my doubts." The words I had been waiting for, fighting for, hoping for, finally spoken. And they were everything and nothing like I had imagined. They did not erase the years of hurt. They did not undo the damage of constant criticism. But they were a bridge, a beginning, a recognition that maybe we could build something new between us, something based on understanding rather than expectation. We stood there in the sunlight streaming through the windows, 3 people trying to navigate the complicated landscape of family, of pride, of reconciliation. It was not perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was real, and that was enough. After they left, I sat alone in the empty community center, the space echoing with potential, with all the lives it would touch and change. I thought about the journey that had led here, the nights of doubt, the moments of triumph, the slow accumulation of choices that had built not just a career but a life I could be proud of. My phone buzzed. A text from Dorothy Richardson. Heard from my friend at City Hall that we passed final inspection. We are opening next month. I could cry with joy. Thank you for giving us this gift. I texted back. Thank you for believing in it from the beginning. This is for you and everyone in this community. Her response came immediately. No, honey. This is for you too. We all need to know our work matters. You know that now, I hope. I did know it. Finally, fully, without qualification. My work mattered. Not because my father said so, not because the mayor showed up or the news covered it, but because real people's lives would be improved by it. That was the measure of success I should have been using all along. September arrived with the subtle shift that marks autumn in the Pacific Northwest. The air turned crisp, the leaves began their slow transformation from green to gold, and the Riverside Community Center prepared for its official opening. The date was set for the third Saturday in September, exactly 1 year from the day I had first pitched the idea in Patricia's office. The planning for opening day was elaborate. The mayor's office wanted another press event. Dorothy Richardson and her church group organized a neighborhood celebration. Local businesses donated food and supplies. A local band agreed to perform. It was shaping up to be a genuine community event, not just a ribbon-cutting photo opportunity. I threw myself into the final preparations, coordinating with the city, the neighborhood groups, the contractors, finishing last-minute punch list items. It was easier to focus on logistics than to process the emotions of seeing this project, my project, finally come to life after months of work and years of dreaming. Ben noticed, of course. One evening in early September, he found me at the office at 7 o'clock, reviewing the opening day schedule for the 100th time. You know the event is going to be fine, right? He said, sitting on the edge of my desk. You have checked every detail twice, the community is excited, the city is supportive. Nothing is going to go wrong. I know. I just want it to be perfect. It is already perfect. The building is beautiful, functional, exactly what the neighborhood needs. Everything else is just celebration. I set down my pen and rubbed my eyes. My father is coming. Ben raised his eyebrows. That is good, right? Last I heard, things were better between you two after his visit in August. They are better. But this is different. This is the culmination of everything. All those years of him doubting me, dismissing my choices, telling me I would never amount to anything. And now he is going to see the entire community celebrate this project. It is validation, but it is also terrifying. What if it is not enough? What if he finds new ways to minimize it? Ben was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something my therapist told me? You cannot control how other people respond to your success. You can only control whether you let their response define your sense of achievement. Your father's opinion, good or bad, does not change the fact that you built something remarkable. Hold on to that. After he left, I sat in the quiet office, his words echoing. You cannot control how other people respond to your success. It was simple advice, almost obvious, but somehow I needed to hear it. I had spent so much energy trying to earn my father's approval that I had lost sight of the fact that my worth was not contingent on receiving it. The week before opening day, I gave several media interviews. Local newspapers, a regional architecture magazine, even a segment on the evening news. Each time, I talked about the philosophy behind Riverside, about designing for community, about architecture as service rather than just profession. The coverage was universally positive, and I started seeing my face and quotes shared on social media, local blogs picking up the story, people talking about the project in ways that felt both gratifying and surreal. Patricia was thrilled with the publicity. This is putting Morrison and Associates on the map in ways we never could have bought with advertising, she said during a staff meeting. And it is positioning us as leaders in community-focused design. We have already had 3 inquiries from other cities wanting similar projects. My parents arrived in Seattle Friday evening, the day before opening day. This time they were staying with me in my small apartment, my mother insisting it would be nice to spend time together to see where I lived. I had cleaned obsessively, hidden the piles of work documents and takeout containers, tried to make the space look like an adult lived there rather than an overgrown college student. My mother loved it, of course, exclaiming over the view of the city from my window, the bookshelf full of architecture books, the framed sketches of various projects I had hung on the walls. My father moved through the space quietly, taking it in without much comment. But I noticed him pausing at the sketches, studying them with more attention than I expected. That evening, we went to dinner at a small Italian restaurant in Capitol Hill. The conversation was easier than it had been at Thanksgiving, less loaded with unspoken tension. My mother asked about the Tacoma project, about my team, about life in Seattle. My father mostly listened, occasionally asking practical questions about timelines and budgets, but without the edge of criticism that usually accompanied his interest. As we were finishing dessert, my father said, "Your mother and I have been talking. About tomorrow, about the opening." "Okay," I said cautiously. "We want you to know that we are proud of you. Not just for this project but for sticking with your vision even when I did not support it. That takes courage." My mother reached across the table and took my hand. "You have always been stubborn," she said with a smile. "Even as a little boy, once you set your mind to something, nothing could shake you. I used to worry about it, thought it would make your life harder. But now I see it was exactly what you needed." I did not trust myself to speak, just nodded and squeezed her hand back. We drove back to my apartment in comfortable silence, the city lights reflecting off Elliott Bay, the Space Needle lit up against the dark sky. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt at peace with my family, with my choices, with the path I had taken to get here. Opening day dawned bright and clear, one of those perfect September days where the whole city seems to exhale after the summer heat. I arrived at Riverside early at 7 in the morning to oversee final preparations. The tent was already up for the speaking portion of the event. Tables were being set up for food. The sound system was being tested. Inside the center, staff hired to run the programs were giving everything a final polish, arranging furniture, testing equipment, making sure every detail was ready. Dorothy Richardson arrived shortly after me, dressed in her Sunday best, a navy dress and pearl necklace, her gray hair carefully styled. She walked through the center with tears streaming down her face, touching walls, looking out windows, sitting in chairs like she could not quite believe it was real. "This is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen," she said to me in the main hall. "Not just the building but what it represents. Oh, investment. Someone finally seeing us as worthy of something good." Her words gutted me in the best way, reminding me why any of this mattered. By 10 o'clock, the crowd was gathering. Neighborhood residents, city officials, reporters, my colleagues from the firm, donors who had supported the project. My parents arrived with Julie and Trevor, who had driven over that morning from Spokane. They found me near the entrance, my mother immediately fussing with my tie, my father standing back with his hands in his pockets but wearing something that might have been a proud smile. The event began at 11 with the band playing, community members gathering, children running around the space with undisguised joy. Then the formal program started. The mayor spoke about inclusive growth and community investment. Patricia spoke about the power of architecture to serve society. Dorothy Richardson spoke, her voice shaking with emotion, about what this center meant to a neighborhood that had been overlooked for too long. And then it was my turn. I walked to the podium, looking out at the crowd, at the mix of faces that represented the journey of this project. My team, my boss, my family, the community I had served. I took a breath and began. 1 year ago, I stood in front of my colleagues and pitched an idea that made no financial sense. A pro bono community center in a neighborhood that most people drove past without noticing. I was nervous, uncertain, convinced I would be laughed out of the room. But someone believed in me. She looked past the impracticality and saw the possibility. "Patricia, thank you for taking that chance." Patricia nodded from her seat in the front row, her expression warm. "But this project is not really about me or about Morrison and Associates. It is about this community, about people like Dorothy Richardson who have lived here for decades and never stopped believing their neighborhood deserved better. It is about children like those I see playing in this space right now, who will have a safe place to learn and grow. It is about elderly residents who will find connection and support. It is about families struggling to make ends meet who will access resources that can change their trajectories." I paused, gathering my thoughts for what I wanted to say next. When I chose to become an architect, people told me I was being impractical. That I should choose something more stable, more profitable, more sensible. And there were times, many times, when I wondered if they were right. When I struggled to find work, when I lived on ramen and hope, when I measured my worth by others' definitions of success. My eyes found my father in the crowd. He was watching me intently, and I held his gaze as I continued. But I stayed the course because I believed, and I still believe, that architecture is not just about building structures. It is about building community, creating possibility, serving human need. And standing here today, seeing this center full of life and potential, I know I made the right choice. Not the easy choice but the right one. The crowd applauded, and I saw my mother wiping tears from her eyes. My father's face was harder to read, but he was clapping steadily, his eyes never leaving mine. I concluded by thanking everyone who had contributed to the project, from the contractors to the donors to the community members who had shared their vision and needs. Then the mayor came up and we did the ceremonial ribbon cutting, cameras flashing, people cheering, and the Riverside Community Center was officially open. What followed was hours of celebration. Tours of the facility, Children testing out the gym equipment, elderly residents settling into the comfortable chairs in the reading room, teenagers gathering in the computer lab. Food was served, music played, people danced. It felt less like an official opening and more like a neighborhood party, which was exactly right. I spent most of the afternoon giving tours, shaking hands, accepting congratulations. My colleagues were enthusiastic in their praise. Robert Hayes from the Tacoma Project made a special trip to attend, telling me this validated his decision to hire us. Even the mayor pulled me aside to say the city wanted to discuss future community projects with Morrison and Associates. But through it all, I kept glancing around for my father, wondering what he was thinking, how he was processing all of this. I finally found him in the late afternoon, standing alone in the rooftop garden. He was looking out over the neighborhood, at the mix of old warehouses and new development, at the evidence of a city in transition. I joined him at the railing and we stood in silence for a moment. "This is quite a view," he said finally. "Yeah. I wanted the garden to be accessible to everyone, not just a nice feature for show. Real growing space, actual community use." He nodded slowly. "You know, I have been thinking about what you said in your speech. About making the right choice instead of the easy choice. What about it? When I was your age, I made the easy choice. Boeing was hiring, the pay was good, the benefits were solid. I never asked myself if it was meaningful or fulfilling. I just knew it was stable. And for 35 years I showed up, did my job, collected my paycheck, and built a comfortable life." He turned to look at me. "There is nothing wrong with that path. It provided for your mother, for you and your sister, gave us security. But watching you today, seeing what you built, listening to those people talk about how this center is going to change their lives, I realized something. You are building a legacy. Decades from now, long after you are gone, people will still be using this space, still benefiting from your vision. What am I leaving behind? Airplane parts that are in a landfill somewhere?" I did not know what to say. I had never heard my father question his choices, never heard him express anything close to regret or doubt about his path. "I'm not saying I made the wrong choices," he continued. "Just that they were different from yours. And for a long time I thought that made your choices wrong. If I had found security and stability through practical work, then anything else must be impractical and risky. But you proved me wrong. You found meaning and security and success through following your passion. You built something that matters." He looked at me directly now, his eyes serious. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see that. I am sorry for all the times I dismissed your work, made you feel like you were wasting your time, told you that you would never amount to anything. I was wrong. You have amounted to something remarkable. The apology I had been waiting for, more complete and genuine than anything I could have scripted." Tears pricked at my eyes and I did not try to hide them. "Thank you, Dad. That means everything to me." He put his hand on my shoulder, a rare gesture of affection. "You did this. Despite my doubts, despite the challenges, despite everything stacked against you. You had a vision and you made it real. That is not just admirable. That is inspiring." We stood there together, father and son, finally on the same page after years of misunderstanding and conflict. It did not erase the past, did not undo all the hurt. But it was a new beginning, a foundation for something better. Later, as the event wound down and the crowd began to disperse, my family gathered near the entrance. My mother hugged me tightly, telling me again how proud she was. Julie and Trevor congratulated me, already planning to bring their future children to the center when they visited Seattle. And my father shook my hand, then pulled me into an awkward but genuine hug. "Good work, son. Really good work." After they left, after the last guests had departed and the cleanup crew began their work, I walked through the empty center one final time. The day's energy still seemed to linger in the space, the echo of laughter and conversation and community. This building, this vision that had started as sketches on paper, was now a living reality that would serve people for decades. I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The doubt, the struggle, the late nights and financial stress. The years of seeking validation from someone who could not give it. The slow realization that the validation I needed had to come from within, from the work itself, from the people it served. And I thought about my father, about his apology on the rooftop, about the bridge we had finally built between his version of success and mine. We would never see the world the same way. Our definitions of accomplishment would always differ. But we had found respect, understanding, a recognition that different paths could both lead somewhere meaningful. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. "Congratulations again on today. Monday morning, let us talk about next steps. I think you are ready for even bigger challenges." I smiled and pocketed the phone. Bigger challenges. A year ago that would have terrified me. Now it felt like promise. Like possibility. I locked up the center and walked to my car in the fading September light. The neighborhood was quiet now, settling into evening. But I could imagine what it would be like in the weeks and months ahead. Children streaming in after school. Elderly residents gathering for book clubs and support groups. Teenagers using the computer lab for homework and college applications. Families accessing resources that would change their trajectories. This was what I had built. Not just a building, but a foundation for change, for growth, for community. This was what I had risked everything for. And standing there in the parking lot, watching the lights of the center glow warmly in the dusk, I knew with absolute certainty that every doubt, every struggle, every moment of feeling like I would never measure up, had been worth it. I had finally arrived. Not at some arbitrary destination defined by others, but at a place of my own making, built on my own terms, meaningful in ways that transcended salary or title or parental approval. I had built something that mattered. And that, finally, was enough. 6 months after the Riverside Community Center opened, I sat in Patricia's office on a gray March morning, reviewing the impact report compiled by the Neighborhood Association. The numbers told a story more powerful than I could have imagined. Average daily attendance of 200 community members. After-school programs serving 75 children. Computer lab booked solid with people working on resumes, job applications, online courses. The senior center hosting 12 different activity groups. 3 small businesses launched by entrepreneurs who used the meeting rooms and resources. But beyond the statistics were the stories. Jerome, the teenager I had met during construction, had been accepted to the University of Washington with a full scholarship. Linda's 3 children were thriving in the after-school program, and she had been able to take a promotion at work knowing they were safe and supervised. Mr. Patterson's veteran support group had grown to 30 regular members, creating a network of care that extended far beyond the center's walls. This is the kind of impact that justifies everything, Patricia said, closing the report. The board wants to green light 2 more community centers. One in Tacoma as part of Robert's mixed-use development, and one in Portland that a nonprofit reached out about. Both with you as lead architect. 2 more Riversides. The thought was both thrilling and daunting. It means scaling up significantly. It does. Which is why I am promoting you again. Partner track starting immediately. You will have more autonomy, more resources, and more responsibility. But you have earned it. Partner track. 3 years ago, I had been a junior draftsman wondering if I would ever make senior associate. Now I was on track to become a named partner in a respected firm. The trajectory felt almost impossible, except it was happening. Thank you. I do not know what else to say. Say you will keep doing what you are doing. Stay true to the philosophy that got you here. Do not let success make you compromise your vision. I thought about her words as I left her office. Do not let success make you compromise your vision. It was advice I needed because the past 6 months had brought temptations I never expected. Developers offering lucrative contracts for projects that had nothing to do with community service. Architecture magazines wanting to feature my work but asking me to emphasize aesthetics over social impact. Colleagues suggesting I had proven my point and should now focus on more profitable ventures. But every time I was tempted to drift toward easier money or flashier projects, I remembered Dorothy Richardson's tears on opening day. I remembered Jerome telling me the center had changed his life. I remembered the elderly residents who finally had a place to belong. That was the work that mattered. That was the legacy worth building. My relationship with my father continued to evolve in unexpected ways. He called every few weeks now, usually with some pretext of a question about construction or design, but really just to talk. He had started following architecture news, sending me articles about community development projects, asking my opinion on designs he saw around Spokane. It was stilted sometimes, our conversations still finding their rhythm, but the effort was genuine. In April, he surprised me by flying to Seattle for a weekend visit. Just him, no buffer of my mother or sister, just father and son navigating time together. We visited Riverside, where he met Dorothy Richardson and saw the center in full operation. He watched children playing basketball, elderly residents taking a painting class, teenagers working intently in the computer lab. This is really something, he said as we sat in the rooftop garden, the same spot where he had apologized 6 months earlier. You can see it is making a difference. It is exceeding every expectation we had. He was quiet for a moment. You know what strikes me most? It is not the building itself, though that is impressive. It is that you listened. You did not come in with your own ideas of what people needed. You asked them, listened to their answers, and built something that actually serves those needs. That is wisdom I never had. You are being too hard on yourself. No, I am being honest. I spent my whole career following orders, meeting specifications, doing what I was told. I never questioned whether the work mattered, never thought about who it served beyond the company paying my salary. You have built a career around service, around asking what people need and figuring out how to provide it. That is a different kind of work than I ever understood. We spent the rest of the weekend exploring Seattle, eating at restaurants I loved, walking through neighborhoods I called home. He asked questions about my life beyond work, about friendships and hobbies and future plans. It felt like getting to know each other for the first time, without the weight of disappointment and defense that had defined our previous interactions. On Sunday, as I drove him to the airport, he said, "I have been thinking about what I said at Thanksgiving. You will never amount to anything. It was cruel and it was wrong, and I have regretted it every day since." "Dad, we have moved past that." "No, let me finish." He looked out the window at the Seattle skyline passing by. "I said those words because I was afraid. Afraid that you were making choices that would lead to struggle and failure. Afraid that I had not prepared you well enough for the practical realities of life. Afraid that if you succeeded on your own terms, it would make my own choices look small by comparison." He turned to look at me. "But you proved all those fears wrong. You did not just succeed. You excelled. You built something meaningful while I was too busy worrying about safety and stability to even imagine what you were capable of. So I want to say this clearly, you have amounted to something extraordinary. And I am sorry it took me so long to see it and to say it." I pulled over into a gas station parking lot because I could not drive and process those words at the same time. We sat there in silence for a moment, both of us struggling with emotions we were not practiced at expressing. "Thank you," I said finally. "Hearing you say that, it matters more than any professional recognition ever could." He reached over and gripped my shoulder. "I love you, son. I have always loved you, even when I was too stubborn and scared to show it properly. And I am proud of the man you have become." It was the first time I could remember my father saying he loved me without it being part of a rote goodbye or holiday greeting. The first time it felt intentional, chosen, meant. I felt something crack open in my chest, years of seeking that validation finally released. We made it to the airport with time to spare. He hugged me at the departure curb, another gesture that would have been unthinkable a year ago. "Keep building good things," he said. "The world needs more people like you." I watched him disappear into the terminal, then sat in my car for a long time, processing the weekend, the conversations, the transformation in our relationship. It was not perfect. We would still have moments of misunderstanding, old patterns trying to reassert themselves. But we had built something new, a foundation of respect and understanding that could weather whatever came next. The Tacoma project reached completion in May, another successful community-focused development that balanced commercial viability with genuine public benefit. The press coverage was extensive, with articles comparing it favorably to Riverside, praising Morrison and Associates for developing a signature approach that other firms were now trying to emulate. Robert Hayes was thrilled with the results and immediately commissioned us for another project in Olympia. "This is the future of development," he told me at the Tacoma opening. "Buildings that serve communities, not just extract profit from them. You have figured out how to do both, and that is going to change the industry." I appreciated his enthusiasm but remained skeptical that one firm's approach would transform an entire industry. Real change required more than good examples. It required shifting values, priorities, investment structures. But at least we were providing proof of concept, showing that community-focused design could be both meaningful and financially sustainable. In June, my sister called with news. She was pregnant. 3 months along, due in December, hoping for a Christmas baby. My mother was beside herself with excitement, already planning nursery designs and buying baby clothes. And my father, according to Julie, had gotten misty-eyed when they told him, immediately starting to build a cradle in his workshop. The image of my father, the practical engineer who measured worth in concrete terms, building a cradle with his own hands, struck me as profoundly symbolic. He was softening, opening up, allowing space for emotion and connection in ways he never had before. Maybe his evolution and mine were happening in parallel, both of us learning to see value in things that could not be measured in dollars or square footage. I flew to Spokane for the 4th of July weekend. My parents were hosting a barbecue, and for the first time in years, I actually looked forward to a family gathering instead of dreading it. The dynamic had shifted. There was less tension, more genuine interest in each other's lives, a feeling of acceptance that had been missing for so long. At one point during the barbecue, I found my father at his workbench in the garage, putting finishing touches on the cradle. It was beautiful work, maple wood with intricate joinery, smooth curves and careful attention to detail. The care he had put into it was evident in every joint and surface. "That is incredible, Dad. I did not know you could do woodwork like this." He ran his hand along the edge of the cradle, checking for any rough spots. I used to do a lot of woodworking when I was younger. Furniture, cabinets, things for the house. Stopped when work got busy and it seemed less practical than just buying what we needed. But when Julie told us about the baby, I wanted to make something that would last. Something with meaning. It is beautiful. Your grandchild is lucky. He set down his sandpaper and looked at me. You know, watching you build that community center, seeing how much thought and care you put into every detail, it reminded me of this. Of making something with your hands that serves a purpose beyond just function. There is satisfaction in that kind of work that I forgot about. I leaned against the workbench. You could start doing it again. Woodworking, I mean. You are retired now. You have the time. Maybe I will. He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. Your mother keeps saying I need a hobby besides watching football and complaining about politics. We stood there together in the garage, the smell of wood shavings and sawdust in the air, and I felt a connection to him I had never experienced before. We were both builders in our own ways. Both creating things meant to last, to serve, to matter. The medium was different, but the underlying impulse was the same. That evening, as the sun set over Spokane and the barbecue wound down, my father asked me to take a walk with him. We headed down the quiet suburban streets of his neighborhood, past houses I remembered from childhood, trees that had grown taller while I had been away building my life. I have been thinking about Thanksgiving, he said as we walked. About what I said to you, how you left, how badly I handled everything. Dad, we have talked about this. We have moved past it. I know, but let me say this. He stopped walking, turned to face me. That day I was scared. Scared that you were 30 years old without the traditional markers of success I understood. Scared that you were struggling financially. Scared that I had somehow failed you as a father by not pushing you toward a more secure path. You did not fail me. Maybe not, but I failed to see what you were actually building. I was so focused on what you did not have that I could not see what you did have. Passion, vision, commitment to something meaningful. Those things seemed frivolous to me because I had never prioritized them in my own life. But they are not frivolous. They are what give life meaning. He started walking again and I fell into step beside him. I spent 35 years doing work that was fine. Solid, necessary, well-paying. But forgettable. I could not tell you which airplane I worked on that is still flying, which parts one design that are still in use. It all blurred together into a career that paid the bills but did not feed my soul. There is nothing wrong with that kind of work, I said. It provided stability for our family. That matters. It does matter. But so does what you are doing. Building things that change lives, that create community, that will be used and appreciated for decades. That is a different kind of legacy. Better one maybe. We walked in silence for a while, the evening air cooling as the sun disappeared behind the houses. Finally, my father said, I want you to know that I see you now. Really see you. Not as the son who made impractical choices, but as a man who had the courage to build a life on his own terms and make it work. That takes strength I am not sure I ever had. You had your own kind of strength, Dad. Showing up every day, providing for your family, being reliable and steady. That is not nothing. No, it is not nothing. But I wish I had combined it with some of your vision, your willingness to take risks for something meaningful. Maybe I still can, in whatever years I have left. We turned back toward the house, the porch light glowing warm in the dusk. I thought about all the years of tension between us, all the arguments and disappointments and misunderstandings. They had not disappeared, would always be part of our history. But they were being overlaid now with something new. Understanding, respect, a genuine relationship built on acceptance rather than expectation. Inside, my mother and sister were cleaning up from the barbecue, laughing about something Trevor had said. My father and I joined them, and we spent the rest of the evening playing cards and telling stories, the kind of easy family time that had been so rare throughout my 20s. As I drove back to Seattle the next morning, I thought about my father's words. I see you now. Really see you. That was all I had ever wanted. Not agreement with my choices, not validation of my path, just to be seen for who I actually was rather than who he had wanted me to be. And now, finally, I had that. August brought the one-year anniversary of Riverside's opening. Dorothy Richardson organized a celebration, inviting everyone who had been part of the project. I arrived to find the center decorated with banners and balloons, tables set up with food, community members streaming in with dishes to share. It felt less like an anniversary party and more like a family reunion, which was exactly right. Dorothy pulled me aside as soon as I arrived, her eyes bright with excitement. I have something to show you. She led me to a wall near the main entrance where they had installed a plaque. I had not been consulted about it, had not known it was coming. The plaque read, Riverside Community Center. dedicated to the belief that everyone deserves a place to belong, to grow, to dream. Thank you to all who made this vision a reality. Special recognition to the architect whose passion and commitment gave this neighborhood a gift that will serve generations to come. Below the text was my name, along with the names of key donors, community leaders, and Patricia Montgomery. I did not know what to say. Dorothy hugged me tightly. This building changed our neighborhood. You changed our neighborhood. We wanted to make sure people know that, today and 50 years from now, the celebration was joyful and chaotic in the best way. Children ran around playing games. Elderly residents sat in circles sharing stories. Teenagers helped serve food. Jerome, now a freshman at UW, gave a speech about how the center's computer lab had helped him prepare for college. Linda talked about how the after-school program had given her children stability during a difficult time. Mr. Patterson described how the veteran support group had saved his life when he was contemplating suicide. Each story was a reminder of why this work mattered, why I had chosen this path despite all the obstacles and doubts. This was the legacy Patricia had talked about. Not buildings for their own sake, but spaces that created possibility, that changed trajectories, that built community. Patricia attended the celebration, as did several colleagues from the firm. Even Robert Hayes made the trip from Tacoma. We stood together watching the community celebrate, and Patricia said, "This is what we are building now. Not just at Riverside but as a firm. A reputation for work that serves people first. You started this and now it is becoming our identity." Feels good, I admitted. Like we are doing what architecture is supposed to do. The fall brought new challenges and opportunities. The Portland Community Center project moved forward, with me making regular trips to meet with neighborhood groups and city officials. The principles I had developed at Riverside guided the design, but each community had unique needs and character. The challenge was balancing a consistent philosophy with site-specific responsiveness. In October, I was invited to speak at a national architecture conference in Chicago. The topic was community-focused design, and the organizers wanted me to present Riverside as a case study. It was my first major professional speaking engagement outside of Seattle, and I was nervous in ways I had not been since my first presentation to Patricia 3 years earlier. Ben helped me prepare, reviewing my slides, challenging my arguments, playing devil's advocate. "You are going to be great," he said after our final practice session. "You are not just presenting a project. You are presenting a philosophy, a way of thinking about our profession that a lot of architects have forgotten." That is powerful. The conference was overwhelming. Thousands of architects from across the country, presentations on cutting-edge designs and innovative technologies, networking events and exhibitions. I felt like a small fish in an enormous pond, wondering what I possibly had to contribute to these conversations. But when I stepped up to present, something shifted. I stopped thinking about impressing my peers and started thinking about Dorothy Richardson, about Jerome, about all the people whose lives had been changed by Riverside. I told their stories. I showed photos of the center in use, not just architectural glamour shots but real people doing real activities. I talked about the design choices we made and how community input shaped every aspect of the project. The response was electric. The room was packed, people standing in the back. When I finished, the applause lasted longer than seemed reasonable. The Q&A session ran over time because people had so many questions. How did you convince your firm to take on a pro bono project? How did you balance community needs with architectural vision? How did you secure funding? How did you measure impact? I answered as honestly as I could, sharing the struggles and setbacks along with the successes. Architecture school does not really prepare you for this kind of work, I admitted. It teaches you to design buildings but not necessarily how to listen to communities, how to navigate funding challenges, how to measure success in terms of social impact rather than aesthetics or profit. After the presentation, I was swarmed by architects wanting to talk, to share their own community-focused projects, to ask for advice. Some were students, idealistic and eager, reminding me of myself just a few years earlier. Others were experienced practitioners feeling burnt out on commercial work and hungry for something more meaningful. A few were firm principals who saw the business case for community engagement and wanted to understand how to implement it. One older architect, a woman in her 60s named Margaret, pulled me aside. "I have been in this profession for 40 years, she said. Watched it become more and more about starchitects and iconic buildings and maximizing developer profits. What you are doing, it is bringing architecture back to its roots. Back to serving people. Thank you for that." Her words stayed with me long after the conference ended. I had thought of myself as doing something new, something innovative. But maybe I was actually doing something old, something foundational that had been lost in the rush toward flashier, more profitable work. I returned to Seattle energized and slightly overwhelmed. The conference had opened doors I had not known existed. Invitations to speak at other events, inquiries from potential clients, interest from architecture schools wanting me to guest lecture. It was flattering and terrifying in equal measure. Patricia was thrilled. "This is exactly the kind of visibility we need," she said. "You are becoming the face of community-focused design, and that is bringing opportunities to the entire firm." But I worried about losing focus, about spreading myself too thin across speaking engagements and consultations when I should be concentrating on actual design work. Ben, ever the voice of reason, helped me think it through. "You do not have to say yes to everything," he pointed out. "Choose the opportunities that align with your values and further the work you care about. Let the rest go." Thanksgiving arrived again, exactly 1 year after the disastrous dinner that had precipitated so much change. This time my parents came to Seattle. They wanted to see my life, my city, the context in which I had built my career. We spent the holiday weekend showing them around, visiting Riverside and the Tacoma Project, eating at my favorite restaurants, walking through neighborhoods I loved. On Thanksgiving Day itself, we had dinner at my apartment. It was cramped with 4 adults in my small space, and the turkey I attempted to cook was slightly dry, but it did not matter. We laughed, told stories, played board games late into the night. My father asked thoughtful questions about my work, shared updates about the cradle he was building and other woodworking projects he had started. My mother beamed, clearly thrilled that her family was finally genuinely getting along. At one point my father raised his glass. "I want to make a toast," he said. "To my son, who had the courage to follow his own path even when I tried to push him onto mine. Who built something meaningful when I told him it was impossible. Who proved that success is not about money or titles or traditional markers, but about making a difference in people's lives. I was wrong about a lot of things, but I was most wrong about you. You have amounted to something truly special, and I am prouder than I know how to express." My mother was crying. I was fighting back tears. Even my father's eyes were suspiciously bright. "To second chances," I said, raising my own glass. "To forgiveness and understanding. To family figuring out how to see each other clearly." We clinked glasses and drank, and I felt a peace I had not known I was missing. The validation I had sought for so many years was no longer just professional recognition or public praise. It was this, my father finally understanding who I was and what I had built, not despite his doubts but beyond them. December brought Julie's baby, a girl they named Claire. I flew to Spokane the day she was born, held my tiny niece in the hospital, watched my sister glow with new mother exhaustion and joy. My father held Claire with a tenderness I had rarely seen in him, tears streaming down his face unashamedly. "Life goes on," he said softly, looking down at his granddaughter. "Generations building on generations. And the best thing we can do is give them space to become who they are meant to be, not who we think they should be." He looked at me as he said it, and I understood. This was his final apology, his acknowledgement that he had tried to shape me instead of supporting me, and his commitment to do better with Claire, to let her find her own path without the weight of expectation. I spent Christmas in Spokane that year, helping with the baby, enjoying family time that no longer felt fraught with tension. On Christmas morning, my father gave me a gift, a small wooden box he had made himself. Inside was a handwritten letter. I read it later, alone in my childhood bedroom. The letter was long and heartfelt, more emotionally honest than any conversation we had ever had. He wrote about his regrets, about the years he had wasted being critical instead of supportive. He wrote about watching me at Riverside's opening, seeing the community's genuine love and gratitude, and realizing that I had achieved something he never had. Not just professional success but meaningful impact. He ended the letter with words I never thought I would read. "You were right and I was wrong. About architecture, about passion, about what makes a life well lived. I am grateful that you had the strength to ignore my doubts and follow your vision. You have taught me more than I ever taught you. I love you and I am proud of you beyond measure." I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the wooden box, knowing I would keep it forever, a tangible reminder of how far we had come. As the year drew to a close, I found myself reflecting on the journey. 2 years ago, I had been a junior draftsman with a crazy idea and more doubt than confidence. Now I was on partner track at a respected firm, leading projects that were changing communities, speaking at national conferences, and building a reputation in the field. But more importantly, I had repaired my relationship with my father, found validation in the work itself rather than external approval, and discovered that success was not about proving people wrong but about staying true to what mattered. On New Year's Eve, I stood on the roof of my apartment building, watching fireworks burst over Seattle's skyline. Somewhere across the city, Riverside was hosting a community celebration. Somewhere in Tacoma, families were living in the housing I had helped design. Somewhere in Portland, plans were moving forward for another community center. And somewhere in Spokane, my father was probably asleep in his recliner, a man who had learned to see the world differently because his son had refused to see it his way. The year ahead would bring new challenges, new projects, new opportunities. But standing there in the cold December air, watching the city light up with celebration, I felt ready for whatever came next. Not because I had all the answers, not because the path ahead was clear, but because I had finally learned the most important lesson. The work mattered. The impact mattered. And my father's belief, hard-won and genuine, mattered more than his doubt ever had. I pulled out my phone and sent him a text. "Happy New Year, Dad. Thank you for everything this year. For seeing me, for supporting me, for being willing to change. Means the world." His response came a few minutes later. "Happy New Year, son. Proud of you every single day. Keep building good things." I smiled, pocketed my phone, and watched the last of the fireworks fade into the night sky. Somewhere below, the city hummed with life and possibility. Communities growing, families thriving, spaces I had helped create serving the needs of people I would never meet. That was the legacy I was building. Not just buildings but bridges. Between vision and reality, between passion and practicality, between a father and son who had finally learned to understand each other. And standing there on that rooftop, watching Seattle welcome a new year, I knew with absolute certainty that I had amounted to something. Not because anyone had told me so, though that helped, but because I could see it, measure it, touch it, and the lives changed and communities built and relationships healed. I had amounted to exactly what I had always hoped to be. An architect who served people. A son who had earned his father's respect. A man who had built a life of meaning on his own terms. And that, finally and fully, was enough. The end opened the door before I could knock, pulling me into a quick hug. She was a small woman, had been a teacher before retiring, with kind eyes that always seemed worried about something. "You made good time. How was the drive?" "Fine. Traffic was light." Good. "Come in, it is cold out. Your father is in the living room watching the game." I stepped inside, the smell of roasting turkey and sweet potatoes filling the house. Everything looked the same as it always did. Same furniture, same family photos on the walls, same sense that time had frozen here somewhere in the late 90s. My father was indeed in his recliner, feet up, watching football on the television. He glanced over as I entered. "You are here." "Yeah, I made it." "Drive okay?" "Yeah, fine." That was the extent of our greeting. He turned back to the television and I stood there for a moment, feeling like I was 18 again, uncertain and invisible. My mother ushered me into the kitchen, where she had recruited my younger sister, Julie, to help with dinner preparations. Julie was 26, worked as a dental hygienist in Spokane, had recently gotten engaged to a guy named Trevor who sold insurance. She was the easy child, the one who had made straightforward choices that our parents understood and approved of. "Hey, stranger." Julie smiled and hugged me. "Long time no see." "Yeah, I have been busy with work." "Mom said you were working on some big project?" I hesitated, glancing toward the living room where my father sat. "Yeah, a community center in Seattle. It has been taking up a lot of time." "That is cool." Trevor and I drove through Seattle last month. So much construction everywhere. The city is really growing. We spent the next hour helping with dinner preparations, small talk filling the spaces between chopping vegetables and setting the table. My mother asked about my apartment, whether I was eating enough, if I had met anyone special. The usual maternal concerns that felt both comforting and suffocating. When dinner was finally ready, we gathered around the dining room table. My father sat at the head, my mother to his right, Julie and Trevor across from me. The table was covered with the traditional spread: turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, rolls. My father said a brief, perfunctory grace, thanking God for the food and the family gathered. Then we began eating, the clink of silverware on plates filling the silence. "So, Trevor," my father said, addressing my sister's fiancé, "how is the insurance business? Still at State Farm?" "Yes, sir." Trevor sat up a little straighter. "Actually, I just got promoted to senior agent. Expanded my client base significantly this quarter." My father nodded approvingly. "That is good. Solid work. Insurance is always going to be needed. People need security." "Thank you, sir. I am hoping to open my own agency in a few years, once I build up enough capital and experience." "Smart plan." My father cut into his turkey. "Having your own business, that is real success. Building something tangible." I felt the familiar tightness in my chest, the sense that every word was a subtle dig at my choices. Architecture is not tangible? 3 years of work, of late nights and sacrifices, and it somehow does not count as building something? Julie jumped in, perhaps sensing the tension. How is work going for you? She looked at me with genuine interest. It is going well, actually. I have been leading a project that is getting a lot of attention. A community center in Seattle. That is nice. My mother smiled. What kind of attention? The mayor's office wants to feature it. There is going to be a press event when we break ground. Local news coverage. I paused, deciding to share the other news. And my boss promoted me. I am a senior associate now as of January 1st. Julie's face lit up. That is amazing. Congratulations. My mother reached over and squeezed my hand. Oh honey, that is wonderful news. I'm so proud of you. I looked at my father, waiting for his response. He chewed his food slowly, deliberately, then took a sip of water. Senior associate, he said finally. What does that mean exactly? It means I get my own team, better projects, a significant raise. It is a major step up in the firm. And this community center, he continued, ignoring the promotion entirely. You said it is getting attention. Are you making money on it? It is a pro bono project. We are doing it to serve the community. So no money. It is bringing in recognition, donors, future opportunities for the firm. But no money right now. I set down my fork, frustration rising. It is not always about money, Dad. This project is going to help hundreds of people. Kids who need a safe place after school, elderly residents who need resources, families who have been ignored by the city's growth. That is very noble, he said, his tone flat. But noble does not pay the bills. How much are you making with this new promotion? Enough to finally pay off those student loans? Enough to buy a house instead of throwing money away on rent? Richard, my mother said quietly, a gentle warning. No, I am just asking practical questions. He looked at me directly now, his eyes hard. You are 30 years old. Your sister is younger than you and she is already planning a wedding, thinking about buying a house with Trevor. What do you have to show for your choices? The words hit like a punch to the gut. All the old insecurities came flooding back, the years of feeling like a disappointment, like a failure in his eyes. I have a career I am passionate about, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I have a project that is going to make a real difference in people's lives. I have the respect of my colleagues and my boss. Respect does not keep you warm at night, my father shot back. Passion does not build equity. I've been trying to tell you this for years. You chose a path that leads nowhere. Architecture, community projects, helping people. It is all well and good until you are 50 years old with nothing in the bank and no security. That is not fair, Julie interjected. He is doing something meaningful. Meaningful, my father scoffed. You know what is meaningful? Providing for yourself. Not relying on handouts or living paycheck to paycheck while you chase some dream of changing the world. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. I'm not chasing a dream. I'm building a career. Just because it does not look like your career does not make it worthless. I did not say it was worthless. His voice rose slightly. I said you will never amount to anything if you keep prioritizing feelings over financial sense. You are 30 years old and you are still basically entry level. I just got promoted to senior associate. And how many years did that take? 3 years to get a slightly better title? Do you know where I was at 30? I was a lead engineer with a mortgage and a family. I had built something real. The room fell silent except for the sound of the football game drifting in from the living room. My mother looked down at her plate. Julie looked between me and my father with worried eyes. Trevor studied his mashed potatoes like they held the secrets of the universe. I should go, I said quietly. Oh honey, no. My mother reached for me. Please, let's just finish dinner. It is Thanksgiving. But I was already moving, grabbing my coat from the hook by the door. I could not stay here, could not sit at this table and pretend everything was fine, that those words had not cut as deep as they did. You always do this, my father called after me. You run away when you hear something you do not like. That is your problem. You cannot face reality. I turned back at the door, anger and hurt burning in my throat. Reality is that I am making a difference. Reality is that I am good at what I do. Reality is that your approval is not the measure of my success. I walked out into the cold November evening, got in my car and drove. I did not know where I was going, just knew I needed to be away from that house, from those words, from the feeling of being small and inadequate that my father could summon with just a few sentences. I ended up at a diner on the edge of town, one of those 24-hour places with vinyl booths and fluorescent lighting. I ordered coffee and sat there for hours, watching Spokane go by outside the window. Families heading home from their own Thanksgiving dinners, probably full of warmth and love and acceptance. Things I had driven 3 hours hoping to find and left with even less of. My phone buzzed repeatedly. Texts from my mother, from Julie, asking where I was, asking me to come back, saying my father had not meant it the way it sounded. But he had meant it. That was the problem. He believed every word. Around midnight, I got back in my car and drove back to Seattle. The highway was empty, just me and the truckers hauling freight through the darkness. I did not cry, did not let myself break down. I just drove, replaying the conversation over and over, wondering why his approval still mattered so much, why after all these years I still sought validation from a man who seemed incapable of giving it. I got back to my apartment around 3:30 in the morning, exhausted and emotionally drained. I fell into bed still wearing my clothes, too tired to even change. When I woke up Friday afternoon, my phone was full of messages. More from my mother and Julie. One from Ben at work, wishing me a happy Thanksgiving. And one from Patricia, sent late last night. Hope you are enjoying the holiday. Looking forward to celebrating your success on Monday. You deserve all the recognition coming your way. I read that message 3 times, letting it sink in. Someone believed in me. Someone saw value in what I was doing. It was not my father, and maybe it never would be. But it was something. I spent the rest of the long weekend alone in my apartment, working on refinements to the Riverside design, responding to emails, trying to pour myself into something productive. The hurt from Thanksgiving dinner sat like a stone in my chest, but I tried to focus on what was ahead instead of what I had left behind. Monday morning, I returned to the office with a strange mix of determination and resignation. The promotion paperwork was waiting on my desk, along with a schedule for the press event in February. Patricia had also included a note. Meeting at 10 to discuss your new role and team assignments. The morning passed in a blur of handshakes and congratulations from colleagues who had heard about the promotion. Ben brought me a coffee and a donut with a candle stuck in it. Celebrating your rebirth as a senior member of society, he joked. At 10, I headed to the conference room where Patricia waited with 2 of the senior partners, Michael and Diane. They spent an hour outlining my new responsibilities, the projects I would oversee, the junior architects who would report to me. It was overwhelming and exciting and terrifying all at once. As the meeting wrapped up, Patricia mentioned one more thing. The press event for Riverside. We are inviting your family. Thought they might want to see what you have been working on, be part of the celebration. My stomach dropped. That is okay, you do not have to do that. She raised an eyebrow. This is a big moment. Most people want to share it with their families. My family is in Spokane. It is a long drive. We will cover their travel expenses if needed. Patricia's tone left little room for argument. This is as much about showing you our appreciation as it is about the project itself. You should have people there who are proud of you. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The thought of my father standing there, watching me receive recognition, filled me with a complicated mix of hope and dread. Maybe he would finally see. Maybe he would finally understand. Or maybe he would find new ways to diminish it, to explain why it still was not enough. That afternoon I called my mother. She answered on the second ring, her voice cautious. Hi honey. How are you? I'm okay. I wanted to apologize for leaving on Thanksgiving. That was not fair to you or Julie. Oh sweetie, I understand. Your father, he just worries about you. He wants you to be secure. I know. I took a breath. Look, there is going to be a press event in February for the community center project I told you about. The mayor is going to be there, local news. My firm wants to invite you and Dad if you want to come. They will cover travel expenses. There was a pause. That is wonderful. Of course we will come. Let me talk to your father. Mom, if he does not want to come, that is fine. I do not want to force it. He will want to come. Her voice was firm. Give me the details and we will be there. After we hung up, I sat at my desk, staring out the window at the Seattle skyline. The gray clouds were starting to break, thin streaks of sunlight cutting through. Maybe this would be the moment that changed things. Maybe seeing the project, hearing other people recognize my work, would shift something in my father's perspective. Or maybe nothing would change at all. Either way, I had to try. Because despite everything, despite the years of criticism and disappointment, some part of me still needed him to see me. Really see me. Not as the son who made impractical choices, but as someone who had built something meaningful, something that mattered. The weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas passed in a whirlwind of work. The Riverside project moved forward with new momentum, the expanded budget allowing us to implement features I had only dreamed about initially. The rooftop garden became a reality, with plans for community gardening plots and green space. The accessibility features were upgraded beyond basic code requirements, ensuring the center would truly serve everyone in the neighborhood. I threw myself into the work, using it as a shield against the lingering hurt from Thanksgiving. Late nights at the office became the norm again, but this time it felt different. I was not trying to prove myself to anyone. I was building something I believed in, something that would outlast the hurt and the doubt. Ben noticed, of course. He always noticed. One evening in mid-December, as I was reviewing contractor bids at 8 o'clock, he appeared at my desk with 2 beers from the office fridge. "You are going to burn out before the press event," he said, setting 1 beer in front of me. "And then Patricia will have to find someone else to shower with praise, and that would be a whole thing." I managed to smile and accepted the beer. "Just want to make sure everything is perfect." "It already is perfect." Ben sat on the edge of my desk. "The design is brilliant, the funding is secured, the community is excited. You have done everything right. So what are you really doing here at 8 o'clock on a Thursday night?" I took a long drink of the beer, considering my answer. "My family is coming to the press event." "That is good, right?" "I do not know. My father, he has never really believed in what I do. He thinks architecture is impractical, that I am wasting my time and my life. I left Thanksgiving early because he basically said I would never amount to anything." Ben let out a low whistle. "That is rough, man. Parents can really know how to hit where it hurts. So I guess I am trying to make sure that when he shows up in February, there is no possible way he can dismiss this. That it is so undeniably successful that he has to acknowledge it. You know that is not how it works, right?" Ben's voice was gentle. "People who are determined not to see something will find a way to avoid seeing it, no matter how obvious you make it. You cannot force someone to be proud of you." "I know. But I have to try." Ben nodded slowly. "Okay. Just remember that whether he gets it or not, whether he is proud or not, the work speaks for itself. You have changed people's lives with this project. That matters regardless of what your father thinks." After he left, I sat there in the quiet office, his words echoing in my mind. The work speaks for itself. Maybe that had to be enough. Maybe I needed to stop seeking validation from someone who seemed constitutionally unable to give it, and find peace in the work itself, in the knowledge that it mattered to the people it would serve. Christmas came and went. I stayed in Seattle, told my parents I had too much work to make the drive. My mother sent care packages with cookies and a sweater. My sister sent cheerful texts with photos of her and Trevor decorating their Christmas tree. My father sent nothing, which somehow hurt less than I expected. The absence of contact was almost easier than the disappointing presence. January brought cold rain and the reality of my new role as senior associate. I was assigned 2 junior architects, recent graduates named Melissa and Brian, both eager and talented and looking to me for guidance. It was strange being on the other side of that dynamic, remembering how I had felt 3 years ago, desperate for someone to believe in my ideas and give me a chance. I tried to be for them what Patricia had been for me. Patient, challenging, supportive. Pushing them to think bigger while teaching them the practical realities of the profession. Some days I felt like a fraud, barely ahead of them in experience, wondering what wisdom I possibly had to offer. Other days I surprised myself with how much I had actually learned, how much I had grown without even realizing it. The press event was scheduled for February 14th, which felt appropriately symbolic. Valentine's Day, a day about love and appreciation, would be the day I either received my father's acknowledgement or finally accepted that it might never come. Patricia planned the event meticulously. A tent would be set up at the Riverside site, with heat lamps to combat the February chill. The mayor would speak, then Patricia, then me. Local news had confirmed coverage. The donors would be there, along with representatives from the neighborhood nonprofits who had partnered with us. And my family driving over from Spokane, occupying 3 seats in the front row that felt simultaneously like an honor and a threat. The week before the event, I called my mother to confirm details. She was chatty and excited, talking about the hotel they had booked, asking what I would be wearing, whether I needed anything. Then, hesitantly, she said, "Your father is looking forward to it." "Really?" I could not keep the skepticism out of my voice. "Yes, really. He has been telling people at the plant about it. About the mayor being there, the news coverage. I think he is proud, honey. He just does not always know how to show it." I wanted to believe her. God, how I wanted to believe her. But years of evidence suggested otherwise. Still I said, "That is good. I'm glad he is coming." The night before the event, I barely slept. I went over my speech dozens of times, the words I had carefully crafted to explain the vision behind Riverside, the community it would serve, the impact it would have. I wanted to sound professional but passionate, knowledgeable but humble. I wanted my father to hear me speak and finally understand that this was real work, meaningful work, work that mattered. February 14th dawned cold and clear, the kind of crisp winter day where the air hurts your lungs but the sky is impossibly blue. I dressed carefully in my best suit, the charcoal one I had bought for interviews 3 years ago and rarely had occasion to wear. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone older than the uncertain graduate I had been, someone who had earned the right to stand in front of cameras and community leaders and claim ownership of something significant. The Riverside site was transformed when I arrived. The tent was up, chairs arranged in neat rows, a podium with the Morrison and Associates logo displayed prominently. Patricia was already there, directing last-minute preparations with the calm efficiency that defined her. She saw me and smiled. "Big day. You ready?" "I think so. You will be great. Just speak from the heart." That is what people respond to. My parents arrived at 11:30, along with Julie and Trevor. I met them in the parking area, my heart pounding. My mother hugged me tightly, my sister grinned and told me I looked professional. Trevor shook my hand and said something about being impressed by the turnout. My father stood back, hands in his coat pockets, surveying the scene with an unreadable expression. "Big crowd," he said finally. "Yeah. The mayor's office did a good job promoting it." He nodded but did not say anything else. We walked toward the tent in silence and I showed them to their seats in the front row. My mother kept squeezing my hand, nervous and excited. My father sat down, crossed his arms and watched people fill in around us. At noon the event began. The mayor spoke first, talking about Seattle's commitment to inclusive growth, to ensuring that development benefits all neighborhoods, not just the wealthy tech corridors. She praised Morrison and Associates for taking on the project, for demonstrating that good design and community service could coexist. Then Patricia took the podium. She talked about the firm's mission, about the importance of architecture that serves people rather than just aesthetics or profit. And then she started talking about me. About the junior draftsman who had walked into her office with a crazy idea and a passionate belief that architecture could change lives. About the countless hours I had poured into making that idea a reality. About the leadership and vision I had demonstrated, not just on Riverside but throughout my time at the firm. I sat in my seat, face burning, acutely aware of my father sitting just a few feet away hearing all of this. Was he proud? Skeptical? Unmoved? I could not bring myself to look at him. And so, Patricia concluded, "It is my great pleasure to introduce the lead architect on the Riverside Community Center project, our newest senior associate, and the person whose vision made all of this possible. Please welcome him to tell you more about what we are building here." The applause was warm and genuine as I stood and made my way to the podium. I looked out at the crowd. Colleagues from the firm, community leaders, donors, reporters with cameras. And in the front row my family. Julie was beaming. My mother had tears in her eyes. Trevor looked politely attentive. And my father. My father was looking at me with an expression I could not quite read. Not pride exactly but not dismissal either. Something in between. Something that looked almost like curiosity. I began to speak, and the words I had rehearsed so many times flowed naturally. I talked about the Riverside neighborhood, about the people who would use this center. I talked about the children who needed a safe place to do homework, to play, to dream about futures that felt possible. I talked about the elderly residents who needed connection and resources, who deserved to age with dignity in the community they had called home for decades. I talked about the design philosophy, about creating spaces that were beautiful and functional, that respected the people who would inhabit them. And then I deviated from my script. I talked about what this project meant to me personally. About believing in work that serves others, even when it is not the most profitable path. About finding meaning in creation, in building something that outlasts us and makes the world slightly better. About the importance of mentors who believe in us, who give us chances even when the practical choice would be to play it safe. I looked directly at Patricia as I said that last part, and she nodded slightly, a small smile on her face. Then before I could stop myself, I looked at my father. Our eyes met, and I said, "And about proving to ourselves and others that passion and purpose are not weaknesses, but strengths. That choosing a path because it matters, not because it is easy or lucrative, is a valid and worthy way to build a life." The words hung in the air. It was not a direct confrontation, but everyone who knew our history would understand what I was saying. My mother reached over and took my father's hand. His face was unreadable, but he did not look away. I finished the speech with technical details about the construction timeline, the features of the center, the partnerships that had made it possible. The applause when I concluded was even warmer than before. People stood, some of them. I saw tears on a few faces, including my mother's. Patricia was clapping with a proud smile. Julie was recording on her phone, no doubt planning to send the video to everyone she knew. And my father sat there, still clapping but slowly, methodically, his face still showing that unreadable expression. After the speech, people swarmed me. Handshakes, congratulations, questions from reporters. I answered on autopilot, part of my brain still fixed on my father's reaction or lack thereof. When the crowd finally thinned, my family approached. My mother hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. That was beautiful, she whispered. I'm so proud of you. Julie hugged me next, still holding her phone. That was incredible. You were so professional and passionate. I got the whole thing on video. Trevor shook my hand firmly. Really impressive work, man. That center is going to change a lot of lives. Then there was just my father, standing slightly apart, hands back in his coat pockets. We looked at each other for a long moment. The noise of the crowd faded into background static. This was the moment I had been building toward, the validation I had been seeking for so many years. He cleared his throat. That was a good speech. Thank you. Another pause. I could see him struggling with something, words forming and dissolving before they could reach his mouth. Finally he said, the design looks solid. You clearly put a lot of thought into it. It was not the glowing praise I had hoped for, but it was something. More than I usually got. I nodded. Thanks. It has been a lot of work. I'm sure it has. He looked past me at the rendering of the community center displayed on a large board nearby. How long until it is finished? Construction starts next month. Should be completed by October, November at the latest. And they are paying you for this? The question stung even now, even after everything. No, it is pro bono. But it has brought the firm recognition, donors, future paid projects. And it got me the promotion. Right. The promotion. He said it flatly, like he was confirming a fact rather than celebrating an achievement. My mother stepped between us, sensing the tension. Richard, why don't we let him get back to his guests? There are a lot of people waiting to talk to him. But I was not done. I needed to address this directly, needed to stop dancing around the elephant that had been in every room we shared for the past decade. Dad, why did you even come today if you were just going to minimize this? He looked surprised. I'm not minimizing anything. You asked if they are paying me. You called the promotion right like it is barely worth mentioning. This is a big deal. The mayor is here. The news is here. My boss just publicly praised my work. And you are standing here acting like it is mildly interesting at best. People around us were starting to notice, conversations dropping to whispers. My mother looked mortified. Julie stepped closer, ready to intervene. But my father's expression hardened. You want me to tell you that you were right and I was wrong? That your choices were smart and mine were old-fashioned and outdated? Fine. You were right. You chose your path and you stuck with it, and here you are getting recognition for it. Congratulations. The words should have felt like victory, but they tasted bitter. Because they were not genuine, not really. They were compliance, not understanding. Acknowledgement, not pride. I do not need you to tell me I was right, I said quietly. I need you to see me. To understand why this matters. To recognize that success does not look the same for everyone, and just because my path does not match yours does not make it less valid. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Patricia appeared at my elbow. Sorry to interrupt, but Channel 5 wants to do a live interview segment. Can you come with me for a few minutes? I looked at my father one more time, then nodded. Sure. I will be right there. I walked away, feeling his eyes on my back, leaving the conversation unfinished once again. The rest of that day and the transition into Chapter 2 continues from here with the protagonist's journey of building the community center and slowly rebuilding his relationship with his father.